But he's also been the only one who's been like, I love this. Everybody's been sitting depressed and talking about shit.
He never needed Hollywood to prove his worth, but Hollywood needed him to remember what true art really is. Mads Mikkelsen is more than an actor. He's a symbol of silent resistance, a man who defied the system, rejected the rules of fame, and built a career defined by bold and often controversial choices. From Hannibal to Another Round, through direct clashes with directors, refusals of million-dollar roles, and sharp criticism of the superficiality of the American industry, his journey is a powerful reminder that authenticity can still triumph over spectacle. So in this video, you'll uncover the darker side of his path, the decisions that almost destroyed his career, the truths Hollywood tried to bury, and the final revelation that will leave you speechless. However, before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. It's essential for YouTube to understand that our content deserves to reach more people and keep growing. If you'd like to support the channel even further, use the Super Thanks button and help us continue bringing stories like this one to life. But if you can't, just leave a comment around what surprised you the most about Mads Mikkelsen. Stay until the end because the final revelation will completely change the way you see this actor. Mads Mikkelsen was born on November 22, 1965, in Osterbro, a modest neighborhood in Copenhagen, Denmark. The son of Bent Christensen, a nurse, and Henning Mikkelsen, a taxi driver, he grew up in a humble family where the value of hard work mattered more than any ambition for fame. From an early age, Mads showed a restless energy, a mix of curiosity, athleticism, and creativity. During childhood, he and his older brother, Lars Mikkelsen, who would later also become a renowned actor, spent hours imitating movie characters and exploring the city streets, never imagining that one day they would both become two of Denmark's most respected artists. Initially, young Mads didn't dream of cinema. His first passion was sports, especially gymnastics. He trained with discipline and dedication, reaching an almost professional level, which shaped his impressive physical posture and body control, traits that would later become trademarks of his performances. Yet behind that athletic strength, there is also a sensitive and inquisitive side seeking something beyond the repetitive rhythm of training. That artistic side began to bloom when, in his youth, Mads discovered dance. He studied contemporary dance at the renowned Ballet Academien in Gothenburg, Sweden, where he moved in the 1980s. There, he immersed himself in a completely new world, one of movement, expression, and emotion, which fascinated him deeply. Mads lived off dance for nearly a decade, traveling, teaching, and performing, and was even considered one of the most promising dancers in Scandinavia. It was during this period that he met Hanna Jacobsen, a fellow dancer and choreographer, who would later become his wife and the cornerstone of his personal life. But as Mads himself has confessed in interviews, dance eventually began to feel like a physical prison. The body has an expiration date, and I started to realize that mine was getting closer. It was then that, almost by chance, he enrolled in an acting course at the Aarhus Theatre School, one of Denmark's most prestigious institutions. This transition, from physical to emotional movement, marked the birth of the actor the world would come to know. He has often said he never sought success, only a new way to express himself. And perhaps that's why his acting feels so genuine. Mads never portrayed characters to please, but to understand. His humble origins and early passions shaped the man who would become known not for his shine, but for his depth. From gymnastics to dance, and from dance to cinema, his story reveals a clear pattern. Mikkelsen has always followed instinct, never the easy path, and that's precisely what made him unique. Therefore, Mads Mikkelsen's transition from dance to cinema was not just a change of profession, it was a transformation of identity. When he joined the Aarhus Theatre School, he was nearly 30 years old, an age when many actors already had established careers. Yet for him, acting represented a new kind of movement, no longer guided only by the body, but by emotion. Theater training gave him the technical tools he lacked, and more importantly, encouraged him to explore vulnerabilities that dance had often concealed. It was in that environment that he discovered the power of silence, pause, and gaze, elements that would later become his signature in his intense and minimalist roles. His talent quickly drew attention within the school, and shortly after graduating, Mads made his film debut in Pusher, 1996, directed by Nicholas Winding Refn. Portraying Tani, a reckless yet vulnerable small-time criminal, he delivered a raw and authentic depiction of Copenhagen's marginalized youth. The film's success was immediate, becoming a cult phenomenon and propelling both Refn's and Mikkelsen's careers. His performance was so convincing that many believed he had lived something similar off-screen. With Pusher, Mads introduced a kind of character that would become recurring in his filmography, a man torn between brutality and sensitivity, between duty and desire. In the following years, he solidified himself as one of Denmark's most versatile actors. He appeared in Flickering Lights 2000, a dark comedy about a group of criminals on the run, and The Green Butchers, 2003, another darkly humorous film where he played a perfectionist butcher in a story as bizarre as it was fascinating. These projects revealed his unique ability to move between the grotesque and the emotional, the violent and the poetic, a rare combination that audiences and critics quickly learned to admire. In Open Hearts, 2002, directed by Suzanne Bier, Mikkelsen delivered one of the most sensitive performances of his career. He played Niels, a married man who falls in love with a woman emotionally devastated after an accident. The film, part of the Dog Me 95 movement, demanded raw acting, stripped of technical artifice, and Mads shone precisely because of the natural way he conveyed pain and guilt. It was at that moment that he ceased to be merely a promising actor and became an essential name in Scandinavian cinema. As his career grew, Mads maintained a discreet personal life, dividing his time between film sets and family life with Hanna Jacobsen and their 2 children. He always avoided glamour,
Probably.
preferring to live away from the spotlight, a stark contrast to his magnetic presence on screen. This duality, the reserved man and the intense actor, fascinated both colleagues and journalists. However, his rise was not always easy. The Danish film industry was small and limited in resources, and Mads had to fight hard not to be confined to repetitive roles. Even so, he showed admirable courage by choosing risky projects, often in independent productions that valued art over profit. This artistic integrity was one of the reasons directors respected him deeply. Over the years, Mikkelsen came to represent something greater than talent alone. He became a symbol of authenticity in Danish cinema. He didn't mold himself to trends, nor did he chase American stardom. And yet, or perhaps precisely because of that, he earned increasing international recognition. In 2004, he returned to the role of Tani in Pusher 2, a sequel that explored the consequences of the criminal world from a more human and introspective perspective. His performance was widely praised and cemented his reputation as an actor capable of transforming marginal characters into tragic, deeply moving figures. This second Pusher revealed an emotional depth that few expected, and for many critics, it was the moment Mikkelsen established himself as Denmark's greatest actor. Around this time, he also began collaborating with major figures in Danish television, appearing in series that helped define the Nordic noir style that would later become a global trend. At the same time, he started gaining recognition outside Scandinavia. International festivals began inviting him, and specialized magazines called him Europe's best-kept secret. His restrained charm, heavy accent, and piercing gaze made him an intriguing figure, the kind of actor who doesn't need to say much to dominate a scene. This combination of talent and mystery was what opened Hollywood's doors to him a few years later, when the world finally realized what Denmark had known all along. Mads Mikkelsen was not just another European actor on the rise, but a complete artist capable of expressing strength and fragility with almost hypnotic naturalness. His rise in Denmark, therefore, became the foundation for everything that followed. He didn't build his career on scandals or self-promotion, but on solid work, daring choices, and an almost obsessive dedication to authenticity. This firm foundation, born within a small, intimate film industry, allowed Mads to face the giant that is Hollywood without losing his essence. His time in Danish cinema was not merely the beginning of his career. It was the laboratory where he learned to transform silence into presence, pain into art, and vulnerability into power. So, when the opportunity arose to enter the most powerful film industry in the world, Mads didn't turn it down, but he did it on his own terms. He refused to abandon the cold, restrained, and intense style that defined him, and stood out with his role as the villain Le Chiffre in Casino Royale, 2006, his definitive arrival in Hollywood, and the first James Bond film starring Daniel Craig. The role came after a series of auditions and negotiations, and Mikkelsen nearly rejected it, believing the character would be just another generic villain in the franchise. However, upon reading the script and recognizing the psychological depth behind the role, he decided to accept it. Le Chiffre was not an explosive or cartoonish villain. He was cold, calculating, and disturbingly human, the kind of antagonist who doesn't need a shout to terrify, but does so through silence. Mads's icy gaze, elegant posture, and enigmatic charisma turned the character into one of the most iconic villains of the modern Bond era. His performance was so remarkable that many critics felt he even outshone the protagonist in several scenes. That role opened Hollywood's doors to him, but also, in some ways, trapped him in a label, that of the sophisticated European villain. The American industry, fascinated by his menacing presence and distinct accent, began offering him similar roles: crime lords, assassins, cold and calculating antagonists. Mikkelsen, though grateful for the opportunities, admitted he wasn't always comfortable with the repetition. In interviews, he joked wryly, "If I can't be the hero, at least I'll be the villain everyone loves to hate." After Casino Royale, his international career accelerated. He went on to appear in Clash of the Titans, 2010, The Three Musketeers, 2011, and Doctor Strange, 2016, where he played Caecilius, a sorcerer corrupted by power. Once again, his talent for balancing composure and emotion stood out, turning the character into something more layered than the typical comic book villain. Still, some critics argued that Hollywood wasn't fully tapping into his dramatic depth. Mads, however, didn't seem to mind. For him, acting was never about being the center of attention. It was about finding truth in every role, even in scripts that left little room for nuance. This philosophy kept him true to his roots, even within the machinery of American mass production. One of the most significant milestones of this phase came with his portrayal of the iconic Dr. Hannibal Lecter in NBC's Hannibal, 2013 to 2015. He had to bring to life a character immortalized by Anthony Hopkins and still reinvented in his own way, an enormous challenge that he met with brilliance. The result was a disturbingly elegant, refined, and intellectual portrayal of a cannibalistic killer that turned the show into a cult phenomenon. Critics were unanimous. Mikkelsen didn't just match Hopkins's intensity. He created a version entirely his own, more restrained and seductive, redefining the character for a new generation. The role brought him worldwide fame and a devoted fan base, particularly for the way he balanced charm and brutality. Many still consider Hannibal the pinnacle of his career, but his rise in Hollywood also had darker sides. Mikkelsen revealed that the constant pressure and exposure made him uncomfortable, and that he never truly adjusted to the superficial nature of the American entertainment world. He often mocked award shows, saying he'd rather stay home with a beer and family than pose on a red carpet. This reserved attitude, far from alienating audiences, only deepened his air of mystery. He became the anti-Hollywood figure, the man who conquered America without ever being fully seduced by it. Over the years, he turned down numerous roles because he didn't identify with the scripts or felt they were simply repetitions of the same archetype. Instead, he preferred to return to Europe and work on more personal, art-driven projects, such as A Royal Affair, 2012, and The Hunt, 2012, the latter earning him the Best Actor award at the Cannes Film Festival. These choices showed that even with global fame, Mikkelsen continued to follow artistic instinct rather than money or status. Still, his name remained in high demand among major studios. In 2021, he replaced Johnny Depp as Gellert Grindelwald in Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore. The decision was controversial, dividing audiences, but Mads faced the challenge with grace. His leap into Hollywood, therefore, was not merely a geographical shift in his career, it was a true test of integrity. He entered an industry known for shaping artists, and came out having shaped himself even more. While many lose themselves in the pursuit of fame, he chose to remain faithful to his Nordic essence, discreet, disciplined, and emotionally intense. Mads is respected both in the United States and Europe, not only for his versatility, but for proving that it's possible to triumph in the heart of Hollywood without surrendering to its illusions. Unlike many Hollywood actors who live under the spotlight, Mads has always preferred to observe rather than react, to speak little, and to act even less when off camera. This reserved attitude, which many interpret as a sign of integrity, has also been seen by some as coldness or even indifference toward the debates that have shaken the film industry in recent years. The first major clash between Mikkelsen and the public occurred when he made comments deemed uncomfortable about the hashtag #MeToo movement. In a 2019 interview with The Guardian, the actor stated, "These days, you just have to say one wrong word and you're dead." The remark, made in a tone of concern about the growing sensitivity in Hollywood, was quickly interpreted by some as a criticism of the movement that sought to expose systemic abuse within the industry. Mads later tried to clarify, explaining that he wasn't defending unacceptable behavior, but rather reflecting on the widespread fear he observed among artists when expressing opinions. Even so, social media reacted with division. On one side were those who saw in Mads a lucid man aware of the issue's complexity. On the other were those who accused him of lacking empathy and emotional engagement with urgent social causes. This controversy marked the beginning of an interesting perception. Mikkelsen, the actor who gives himself completely to his roles, seems to withdraw completely when it comes to the real world. In 2023, a new controversy reignited this image. During the Venice Film Festival, at a press conference for The Promised Land, a journalist questioned the lack of diversity in the cast and crew, asking whether that reflected a limited vision of European cinema. Mads reacted with an ironic look and replied simply, "Are you serious?" His cold tone and restrained laughter created an awkward atmosphere in the room, and the video quickly went viral. Many thought he was rude and dismissive, while others saw his reaction as fatigue toward overly politicized questions in a space that, for him, should focus on art. The episode once again revealed a curious duality. Mads is a man who lives art intensely, but avoids turning it into a stage for activism. He believes cinema should provoke reflection, not speeches. However, this philosophy puts him at odds with the spirit of the times, an era in which celebrities are constantly pressured to take a stand. When asked about topics like representation, politics, or the environment, Mikkelsen almost always responds evasively or with dry humor, preferring to say that he's not the right person to teach anyone. Many fans defend him, claiming this neutrality shows maturity and dedication to his craft, while critics argue that such silence keeps him comfortable in an industry that increasingly demands social responsibility. Another topic that sparked debate was his replacement of Johnny Depp in the Fantastic Beasts franchise. When Depp was removed from a production due to domestic violence allegations, Mikkelsen accepted the role of Gellert Grindelwald, a decision that divided audiences. Depp's fans criticized him for supposedly benefiting from an unjust situation, while others praised him for taking on an almost impossible challenge. Amid the chaos, Mads maintained his usual composure, refusing to engage in controversy. He simply stated that he did not judge Depp, and that his job was to create a different version of the character without imitating anyone. This neutrality was seen by some as diplomatic, by others as lacking solidarity. Still, his performance was widely praised, proving that even in the storm of public opinion, Mikkelsen prefers to let his talent speak for him. Another recurring topic surrounding the actor is his relationship with fame and public image. In a world dominated by social media, Mads remains one of the few major film stars who practically avoids any online presence. He maintains no active profiles and rarely shares aspects of his personal life. In an interview with GQ magazine, he explained that constant exposure kills mystery, and mystery is what keeps the audience curious. This philosophy shields him from scandals, but also makes him seem inaccessible. While many artists use their platforms to connect with fans or champion causes, Mads chooses silence, a silence that paradoxically makes him even more fascinating. Some Scandinavian critics have even labeled him the man who refuses to be understood, both a compliment and a provocation. Even on set, Mikkelsen carries that air of enigma. Colleagues describe him as intense and meticulous, but also as someone who can be difficult for asking many questions and challenging artistic direction when he disagrees. He acknowledges this trait himself, saying he only accepts a character if he can understand it deeply, which often leads to creative clashes with directors. Though this can create tension, it's also what makes him such a respected artist, because his pursuit of authenticity is never up for negotiation. In his journey, success never came without risks, and in many moments without silent pain. His career, though brilliant, is marked by choices that could easily have led him into obscurity, and by experiences so intense that they left emotional scars. Mikkelsen has never been the kind of actor who chooses roles for comfort or prestige. On the contrary, he seems drawn to discomfort, to narratives that disturb, to stories that force him to strip himself emotionally. And it is precisely this level of surrender that has led him, more than once, to face artistic and personal tragedies few truly understand in depth. One of the most emblematic examples of this darker side of his career is the film The Hunt, 2012. In it, Mikkelsen plays Lucas, a kindergarten teacher falsely accused of child abuse. The film, directed by Thomas Vinterberg, is one of the most powerful and emotionally devastating works in modern Scandinavian cinema. Mads' performance is visceral, so real that during filming, he admitted having difficulty separating himself from the character. In interviews, he said the role affected him deeply, leaving him with insomnia and anxiety. It was impossible not to take the weight home, he explained. The psychological strain was so great that, after filming ended, Mikkelsen needed a long break before accepting another project. Through The Hunt, Mads became the face of a story that stirred society's most uncomfortable emotions, and for many, Lucas's vulnerability became indistinguishable from Mikkelsen's own. It was one of the few moments when audiences could see just how far his dedication to art could flirt with emotional self-destruction. Another challenging moment in his career came with Polar, 2019, a Netflix production inspired by a graphic novel. The film was criticized for its excessive violence and lack of narrative coherence, and Mads, who played an aging assassin about to retire, found himself at the center of harsh reviews. Many fans felt he had sold out to a shallow commercial project, something that clashed with his history of artistic choices. However, the actor explained that he took the role as a form of fun, a lighter break after emotionally demanding projects. Still, the negative reception affected him, and he acknowledged that his choices don't always please everyone, but that he prefers to fail trying something new than repeat safe formulas. This honesty is one of the reasons Mikkelsen is so respected. He's unafraid to risk his reputation for the sake of authenticity. Another controversial episode was his replacement of Johnny Depp in Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore, 2022. The offer came amid a storm of controversy, following Depp's removal from the franchise after his legal battle with Amber Heard. Mikkelsen knew any decision would be polarizing. Accepting the role meant inheriting an angry fan base and facing inevitable comparisons. Still, he accepted. In his own words, it was a difficult situation, but someone had to carry the story forward. The decision divided audiences, and many unfairly accused him of opportunism. However, Mikkelsen handled it with dignity, refusing to criticize Depp, avoiding public arguments, and focusing solely on building his own version of Grindelwald. The result was remarkable. His performance was widely praised, even by some of the franchise's most skeptical fans, solidifying his reputation as an actor capable of turning any role into something authentic. But this experience also revealed the ungrateful side of fame, being celebrated by critics while attacked by online mobs. He faced it all with composure, reaffirming his philosophy of talk less, work more. Mikkelsen has also faced physical and emotional challenges in other productions. In Arctic 2018, filmed under extreme conditions in Iceland, he portrays a man struggling to survive after a plane crash. The shoot was grueling, sub-zero temperatures, long hours of isolation, and a script with almost no dialogue. He described the experience as the hardest of my life, but also one of the most liberating. The film was critically acclaimed, but the process took its toll. Mads fell ill during filming, even fainted from exhaustion during one scene, and had to be rescued by the crew. Still, he refused to stop shooting. When I took this role, I knew I had to feel the cold for real. The audience can tell when you're faking it, he said in an interview. That obstinacy is a defining trait of his career, a quiet perfectionism that constantly pushes him beyond his limits, even at the cost of his health and peace. Beyond the physical and emotional toll of his roles, Mikkelsen has also faced the challenge of balancing art and market. Unlike many of his peers, he has never been an actor shielded by big studios or marketing machines. He's always navigated between independent films and major franchises, striving to balance integrity and visibility. That path, while admirable, has placed him in delicate situations, such as when he turned down roles in superhero movies or billion-dollar productions because he didn't connect with the scripts. He has said that saying no is harder than saying yes, but it's what defines who you are as an artist. Among the tragedies of his career, there are also the invisible ones, the promising projects that failed, the films that went unnoticed, and the moments of loneliness behind the scenes. In several interviews, Mikkelsen has admitted that success can be a burden, and that he has often felt disconnected from everything around him. People think I'm always confident, but the truth is, every new role scares me, he once confessed. This vulnerability, rare in an industry driven by egos, reveals the essence of a man who would rather be honest than appear invincible. Through highs and lows, Mads Mikkelsen has built a career rooted in courage, the courage to fail, to expose himself, to choose roles that transform and consume him at the same time. His tragedies and risks are not flaws, but marks of authenticity. Behind the cold and enigmatic image that audiences often associate with Mads Mikkelsen lies a deeply human, private, and surprisingly simple man. His personal life, far from Hollywood's spotlight, is marked by a constant search for balance, normalcy, and authenticity, values that seem almost anachronistic amid the machinery of modern stardom. Mads was born and raised in Copenhagen, in a modest and creative family. His father, Henning Mikkelsen, was a taxi driver, and his mother, Bent Christensen, a nurse. He has an older brother, Lars Mikkelsen, also a renowned actor known for series like House of Cards and Sherlock. Their relationship has always been one of admiration and friendship, though they've followed distinct artistic paths. Mads never wanted to compete with his brother. He often says that each of them represents a different side of the same coin. Curiously, for much of his youth, Mikkelsen had no intention of becoming an actor. He was a dedicated athlete, passionate about gymnastics and street sports. Before venturing into film, he worked as a professional contemporary dancer for almost a decade, training intensively and touring Europe with various companies. That period shaped his discipline and his physical sense of performance, something that would later become a defining mark of his acting style, the control of the body as an extension of the mind. But despite his talent and passion, Mads realized that dance would be a short-lived career. At 30, an age considered late for a new beginning, he decided to change his path entirely and enrolled in the Aarhus Theatre School in Denmark. It was a risky leap, one that many thought was madness, but it was there that the actor the world would come to know was born. This courage to reinvent himself defines much of his life philosophy. Mikkelsen often says, "There's no right moment to start something new, only the moment you decide you can no longer live without it." Perhaps that's why his personal life has remained so stable, even in the face of fame. He has been married since 2000 to choreographer and actress Hanne Jacobsen, his partner since the 1980s. The couple has 2 children, Viola and Carl, and they live far from the chaos of Los Angeles, in a modest home in Copenhagen. For Mads, family is the center of everything. In many interviews, he emphasizes that success means nothing without roots. He avoids exposing his wife and children, rarely speaks about his domestic life, and when he does, it's with a shy tenderness. "I'm just an ordinary man who cooks, washes the dishes, and complains about the weather," he jokes. That simplicity is perhaps his greatest act of resistance against the cult of celebrity. Even though he's considered one of the most talented European actors of his generation, Mikkelsen has never allowed himself to be seduced by glamour. He dislikes red carpet events, avoids industry parties, and when he has to attend, he does so out of obligation rather than enjoyment. In Hollywood, he's known for arriving quietly and leaving just as quickly. He prefers being at home, cooking or cycling, something he still does daily in Copenhagen. This discreet attitude has caused some confusion in the United States, where self-promotion is almost a requirement. Mikkelsen, however, refuses to live for his image. He believes mystery is an essential part of art, and that the audience doesn't need to know everything about the artist. This idea, which may seem old-fashioned to some, is what keeps his integrity intact. However, his discretion has also made him a target for misunderstandings. Throughout his career, some journalists have described Mads as cold or distant, when in reality, he's simply reserved. Those who know him personally describe him as a man of dry humor, sarcasm, and kindness, someone who avoids talking about himself but shows genuine interest in others. On set, he treats everyone equally, from the director to the production assistant, and has little patience for inflated egos, which dominate much of the industry. He's a professional of few words and total dedication, earning the quiet respect of everyone who works with him. Mikkelsen's legacy goes beyond the roles he has played. He represents a type of artist that is slowly disappearing, one who prefers craft over fame, silence over self-promotion, truth over appearance. In an era when many actors turn themselves into brands, Mads has chosen to be a symbol of authenticity. His career stands as a lesson in integrity. He's proven that it's possible to move between European cinema and Hollywood without losing one's identity, that one can be universal without being generic. His presence in films like The Hunt, Another Round, Casino Royale, Arctic, and Hannibal is a rare display of versatility. Each character carries a depth that transcends the script. He doesn't act to please, he acts to provoke. And that commitment to artistic truth is perhaps the greatest part of his legacy. The less visible side of Mikkelsen, however, is the most fascinating. Beneath the firm posture and piercing gaze is someone who still feels slightly out of place in the system, someone who prefers to observe the world rather than be observed. In several interviews, he's admitted he doesn't see himself as a celebrity and sometimes feels like a stranger in his own craft. This self-image reveals a melancholic yet profoundly human trait. Mikkelsen seems to carry the awareness that success is fleeting while art endures. He has confessed that he fears the day the audience will stop believing in his characters, which is why he constantly challenges himself to explore new layers. The legacy of Mads Mikkelsen, therefore, cannot be measured by awards or box office numbers. He is the embodiment of silent resistance to superficiality, a reminder that an artist's true power lies in honesty, not in fleeting glamour. His calm, private life is the foundation of a career built on firm choices and rare convictions. And perhaps it's precisely this contrast between the ordinary man and the extraordinary artist that makes Mads Mikkelsen not just a great actor, but an almost mythical figure in contemporary cinema. A man who, without ever needing Hollywood, ended up teaching Hollywood what it means to be authentic.